Final speaker for our session, giving insight on developing the next generation of leaders, something I'm personally incredibly passionate about. So please welcome Jon Brookstein, Head of Development for British University and College Sport.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. I think as we come into this, just thanks obviously to what Alex and Jack have said ahead of me here, but it brings to mind part of my motivations for this development of young leaders, because hearing Jack talk about, very much looking at life through a different lens when you become a parent, and then Alex prompting the question of what's your most memorable sporting experience. All of my own sporting experience have been eclipsed now by going to my son, 3 years old, his first nursery sports day. And that was my proudest moment, of watching him participate in a race that looked far more like dog agility than anything you would see in the Olympics. But the pride of watching him crawl through this perspex tunnel out the other side to pick up a shopping basket and run to pick up a beanbag to put in it was, far surpasses any of my own achievements in sport, which probably says a lot for the level of which I've engaged in sport. I'll start the presentation now.
That's counting in your time, by the way.
Okay. In which case, I'll try and rattle through this slide. Really busy slide, and I should apologise for putting it up there. But when someone from BUCS comes to talk, there's bound to be people in the audience whose perception of BUCS is sport. Yeah, that's what they do. And it's true, it's a huge part of what we do, and a huge part of our heritage. But we are now a much bigger organisation than that. So I just wanted to show that slide, because our aspiration is to deliver, with our members, the best university sports experience in the world. Now, if we only focused on those who played competitive sport, we'd probably reach about 5% of students. And I don't think we could really claim to be delivering that mission statement and give ourselves a healthy pat on the back at the end of it if they were the only people we impacted. So sport, and when I use the word sport in this presentation, please understand I mean sport in its broadest sense, physical activity, right the way through to the top end of that participation spectrum. And then the three strands that we have that cut across those are what I'm talking about today: professional and workforce development. Absolutely fundamental to all that we do is inclusion, and then the profile and the influence of what we do is perhaps something we need to get better at, because again, if those perceptions are still out there that we're an inter-university sports organisation, then we've got a few more people to educate. So what I'm here to talk about today is really developing leadership and really celebrating the strength of what is one of the cornerstones of university sport is the peer leadership model. Sport in our sector would not exist without the university student leaders who make it happen. So, we a long time ago knew that this was something we had to focus on, we had to work with, and we had to celebrate. But it comes, within a really moving landscape that is higher education. And there are obviously higher education colleagues in the room who will hopefully confirm that you can't talk to senior leadership figures of a university at the moment without mentioning student experience, without mentioning added value, without mentioning mental health and well-being, but also the end goal for every student at university is employment and employability. So for me, this professional and workforce development piece and this development of leaders happens within that landscape, and it needs to act as a reference point for all of those objectives as we develop these young people and send them off into the world and wish them well. So I was going to go through a little exercise, but I'll cut it out. If you can, just think about your own journey. When you left education, not making any assumptions that everyone in the room will have been to university, but when you left education and stepped into the workplace, you'd have had to go through an interview process. Now, that interview process might well have just started with that first magic minute we hear talked about all the time. How do you go about making that first impression? How do you, that first simple handshake of introducing yourself can for some be quite a challenging task. This is in a backdrop of, I said mental well-being is a key concern within the higher education sector at the moment. Just think of your own anxieties as you went through that journey yourself and put it in the backdrop that students now are less satisfied with life, less sense of feeling worthwhile, a lower sense of happiness, and over 50% more anxiety than the population at large. So gone are the days of this assumption that students are all carefree, that students are time rich. It's simply not true in the current landscape. So how do we prepare these young people with the resilience that they need in the workplace? How do we create the workforce of the future that, as I now look at my son in nursery and think of his physical activity and sporting career ahead of him, whatever that looks like, who are the leaders that are going to influence that? And have they got the resilience, the fortitude? Have they got everything that they need to give every Thomas out there the best experience that he can have and deliver what everybody has been talking about here today? We've been talking about change, we've been talking about transformation, but that needs leadership. And leadership has to be right at the heart of everything we do when we start to consider those challenges. So I don't want to paint too negative a picture. It's not all doom and gloom. And we commissioned some research, it is a couple of years ago now, it was 2013, with the Sports Industry Research Centre up at Sheffield Hallam, which was a really insightful piece of work for us. It was our first venture, if you like, into the world of academic research. And I'm not a researcher, so I'm not going to put research findings and slides and stuff in front of you, certainly not the timescales that we've got today. But ultimately, a student survey, working with about 43 vice-chancellors as well, and working with over 100 graduate employers, the research found that students who were engaged in sport, physical activity, and in particular volunteering and leadership, were 25% less likely to have encountered a period of unemployment since graduation. This is a graduate survey. Quite a meaningful stat. That's something we as sport can pat ourselves on the back for and say, okay, we can work with that. It's a nice headline. Also, when talking to young people about why they should play sport, well, we don't want it all to be about the money, but ultimately we can demonstrate that graduates who are led an active life, they've engaged in sport and physical activity, and again, volunteered and led through sport at university, graduate into a role that pays between $4,000 and $6,000 a year more. There's a student survey a graduate survey of about 7,000 students there. There were other outcomes as well, looking at not just as starting salaries look a bit healthier, but also salary progression was a lot quicker. And actually, when you start talking to the employers, as I say, there are 106 graduate employers surveyed as part of this. 94% said that they recognised the qualities, skills, attributes and behaviours that sport offered over and above certain other pursuits, and what they would rather be employing are graduates who have engaged in sport, especially in leadership roles, than those who haven't. That's quite reassuring when you think of what we're all investing in here. So that led us down a certain path as well, and I want to share with you really briefly a case study, some work that we've done with Deloitte. Now, that doesn't look a lot like sport. I appreciate that, but the whole point of our relationship with Deloitte and with a leadership organisation called Fieri, who are fantastic in supporting us with this, was taking the skills that these people are demonstrating on a regular basis, taking them outside of a sporting environment and challenging them slightly, giving them the opportunity to test themselves, celebrating their leadership qualities and skills, and hopefully it wasn't all running around in the mud building things, but hopefully empower them to talk about what they've learned and to articulate that better to potential employers, because we recognise there's a gap there. And it's, I've got a short video just to show kind of what went on this Leadership Academy. But it was, for us, it was all about doing things differently. For Deloitte, it was about positioning themselves differently to the other brands in that graduate recruitment space. But here's a video of what we did. But you can see it looked a little bit different to what your kind of first mental image might be of university sport. And like I say, that was very deliberate from us, from Deloitte and from Fieri. You'll have also picked up on some of the instructors and some of the scenarios that we're working with were a little bit military at times, and that's some of the skill and the expertise and where we drew that leadership expertise from through Fieri. For those who don't know, Fieri is a leadership organisation actually established by principally injured servicemen, and they're the same crew that took Prince Harry to the North Pole, for example, that Walking with Wounded campaign. It's another part of their business. But they offer phenomenal insight and almost a practical application of the leadership theory that you can pick up books and read about. They very much walked our students through it in a fairly intensive crash course. It was really, it was incredible to watch. Unfortunately for us, that program isn't, and perhaps I shouldn't say this in this forum, that program isn't still up and running because you work with a commercial partner. There is a certain fragility to that relationship, and as a commercial partner's priorities shift, unfortunately that relationship isn't there. But what we have done since is we've formed a leadership group of our own within our sector. The strategy I showed at the start is not a strategy for 30 staff at BUCS, it's a sector-wide strategy that as a members organisation, everyone is working together to deliver. So we have a group of experts from across our sector working really closely with SIMSPA, with UK Sport, sorry, I meant to say UK Coaching, apologies, with UK Coaching to really look and explore the potential of that space again. So I guess the final slide for me is hopefully just to prompt a thought process about how you go about engaging these people. But my theory is that if you ask the people, and I don't just mean the real genuine figurehead leadership, but if you ask the people in positions of influence and leadership today, you might hear about how things should be done right now or how things might have been done before now to avoid some of the challenges we face now. But for me, the really exciting bit is when you start engaging with those leaders of the future and allow them to help you shape what that future could look like. And the offer there is a genuine one. There's a couple of colleagues from BUCS in the room. But if we can help you in any way engage with those leaders, with those people that our sector is very fortunate to have in there, then please get in touch. We're more than happy to help you, especially given the journey that we're all on here and the change we'd all like to see. So thank you very much.